All right. Hello, everyone. I think we should be live now. Let me just check in YouTube if the stream is happening. Yeah, I think it's loading. All right. Okay, perfect. Okay, hello, everyone who is with us for the 49th edition of Sofia Crypto Meetup. And today we'll be talking about Ethereum and in particular what to expect from the future update, scaling update of Ethereum, which is called Ethereum 2.0. And we have two great guests, Ivo and Nikki, who are both developers, also very much acquainted with Solidity. But before we jump into the main part of our talk, we will, as usual, start with the biggest news from the month, as presented by Anastasia. And Anastasia, you can share your screen if you want now.
Hi everyone. So I'm Anastasia. I'm from Nexo. I'm just let me share my screen now. Okay, so just a second.
Nice photo.
Yeah. Let me see where is the. Just a second. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, we're gonna chill on this. Nice.
Here it is. Okay.
Okay, nice.
So, like this is the what we're gonna talk about today. We have really knowledgeable guests that will lead the panel later, but we'll start now with the headlines. As usual, we have made a poll at the Sofia Crypto Meetup group, and those are the three winning news headlines for the month. News number one, the total stablecoin supply surpasses 10 billion in USD. I have shared, you can see now from the block, a graph where you can see that actually over 85% of the dominance is of Tether. So the total stablecoin supply just like recently hit an all-time high of $10.4 billion. It happened on the 12th of May. It crossed that mark for the first time in history, and generally it has grown by more than 70, close to 80% since February. So here we can see that Tether is like vastly dominating with over 85% of the total supply. There are quite a few explanations according to analysts. So like historically, altcoin traders have preferred to use Bitcoin, at some point actually ETH, as the currency that prices other tokens. But during the past 2 years, we have seen a bit of a shift in the trend, leaning into stable coins. So reason for that preference over Bitcoin as a base trading pair is because of the USD-backed coins' inherent price stability. According to data from Nomics, growth in trading stablecoin quote pairs coincides with serious growth in total altcoin trading volume. But that growth excludes ETH and Bitcoin quote pairs, which have mostly stayed below their volume highs that were made in late 2017. Demand for stablecoin quote pairs in cryptocurrency spot markets has influenced derivatives products as well. The next news, number two, Satoshi, is that you? So a whale alert, someone has sent 50 Bitcoin that was mined back in February 2009 to two different wallets. Considering that the first block of Bitcoin was mined in January the same year, it narrows down the individual to either Satoshi Nakamoto himself or like literally a few other miners who were present at the time. The news triggered a flood of tweets too, many speculating it does not look like Satoshi. For example, Nick Carter, someone I follow, co-founder of Coinmetrics, said, I quote, "It's basically impossible to prove that Satoshi didn't mine these coins, but the best research we have suggests that Satoshi mined a specific set of blocks, of which this is not one." We have also, you can see here the results of our poll. We have created a poll in our Sofia Crypto Meetup group. Actually, most of the people voted that this is nothing. Only 4 people said it is bullish. What happened with BTC price? Right after the news, it initially fell from around $9,900 to $9,300 as the market first reacted to the transaction, but very shortly it recovered. So I would say the prediction was pretty good from our community. News number 3, Telegram terminates the TON project. It was the TON project was abruptly terminated earlier this month. An avalanche of news followed. It was announced actually in a blog post by Pavel Durov himself, the CEO of Telegram. Shortly after, Telegram withdrew their offer to pay investors with Gram tokens. So what was expected, investors pledged to sue the company. On the 7th of May, free TON blockchain and tokens were launched by the centralized community, which claims that Telegram needs to step away from the project. And just recently on the 25th, just a couple of days ago, Telegram has withdrawn an appeal against the SEC ruling that blocked its efforts to build the Telegram Open Network TON and the associated Gram cryptocurrency. According to reports, the company, it was official, and let's see what happens next with them. So now we go back to Vlad, who will tell us more about the movement of Bitcoin and ETH.
Well, just a few quick words here on the Bitcoin price. We kind of saw in the last month that the price is going up to 10K, and it's hardly it's very hard for the price to go beyond 10K and stay there, which is kind of growing or influencing the sentiment. And I would say that currently the prevailing sentiment around Bitcoin is that it's kind of people are getting a bit bearish, I would say. It's quite possible to go down a little bit more in the short term. Today we saw a little bit of an increase, and so you can see that from the little dot at the end, which is actually from today. But it's quite possible that this is something called a dead cat's bounce, and that we see lower levels in the next weeks, possibly months, as the economic effects of the coronavirus lockdowns is actually becoming more of a reality. I'm personally a bit bearish currently, short-term bearish, medium and long-term very bullish on Bitcoin, but short-term I'm looking into possibly lower levels where we can stack more sats, and me personally stack some more sats. But so this is about Bitcoin, and Ethereum is not doing much currently. Actually, this is a very interesting topic, and maybe but we definitely need to discuss this a little bit today with our 2 guests. How, for example, Ethereum 2.0 will impact the price, and I'm pretty sure that most of the people watching are quite interested in that. But as you can see, after the big middle finger by Ethereum, the price is really not doing much, and this floating around to $200. Yeah, and this is it. And now, before we go to the main part with Anastasia doing something like a short overview of Ethereum 0.0, I'll give the word to one of our sponsors, actually a representative of one of our sponsors, uh, which is Ashish from Eternity. Actually, not Eternity Ventures, but Eternity. So, Ashish, let's hear what's happening with Eternity. Do you have? I hear you have some interesting news to announce.
Okay, am I audible?
Hey,
Vla-
yep, I'm back. Sorry, I pressed the button and I went out, came back.
Perfect, perfect.
Go ahead.
So, okay, talking about a very, very interesting project, Superhero. Um, so it's currently, I'll just summarize it into a very, very easy to understand explanation about Superhero. It is a platform where you literally are directly connected to people, and there are no mediators. And it is a direct way to send tips to anybody, any public URL, any damn URL on the internet. You can just send the tips directly. So, for example, there is a YouTube creator, and there is a really, really keen fan of that YouTube creator. So if the fan feels like I have to send some tips to my creator, so he can just take the URL of that content which the creator has created, paste it in the Superhero wallet, and just send some tips in the form of AE tokens. So what you exactly need to do is you just have to go to superhero.com, just have to create a wallet, create a chain name, and just have to put the URL, and you can just send some tips to any public URL in the world. Now, on the creator side, suppose you are a creator, or let's take an example of me being on YouTube as a creator, and now some of my fans have sent me a small tip. So, how do I claim that? So, I, on the other side, have downloaded a Chrome extension or maybe a wallet in my phone. So we have these two types of wallets, and I can just go to my content page where I have created my YouTube video, and I can just open my wallet extension over there, and it directly, and I click on receive tips. So one is send tips and one is receive tips. So when I click on receive tips, it automatically gets me the tips that are already received on this URL. So what I easily do is I just claim tips and I just withdraw it into my Eternity account or whatever that is. So on the Eternity address or the chain name. So the conditions, how it becomes secure is that you have to have the chain name. The wallet literally detects on the URL that you own, does it have a chain name or not. For example, my chain name is ashish.chain. So on my YouTube video, somewhere in the description, or maybe in the title, or maybe somewhere on my Instagram bio or my Twitter bio, there should be a chain name which is particularly accessible by me. So there should be ashish.chain, and this is how the wallet will be able to rectify that, whether I am a verified person to claim the tips or not. So this is what makes it super strong, and nobody can literally take away your tips or something kind of that. So what Superhero exactly does is it relieves people from mediators. Creators get their save their unfair cut taken by the mediators like YouTube. For example, there is a brand who comes to YouTube for advertisement. So the brand gives money to YouTube, and YouTube puts the advertisement before your content, and YouTube takes a cut, and you get a cut from that money which is given to YouTube. So basically, we are eliminating YouTube, and the brand and the person can directly be connected using Superhero. So ultimately, yes, this is what Superhero is all about.
Okay, nice. And you can actually use this not only for YouTube, but you can use it for your blogs,
Definitely.
for any page, any web page, or as you mentioned,
Definitely.
any URL. So this is very, very interesting. And as far as I understand, there is also like an iPhone an app and also an app for Android.
Android. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes. It's already on the App Store and the Play Store.
pretty cool. And if like people want to learn more, where should they go? Like where can they get support?
Super. Just type superhero.com and there is every damn thing you can get.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Ashish, for this information.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank
I
you.
wish, yeah, Eternity all the best with your superhero. Bye bye for now. All right, Anastasia, if you want, you can also jump in with a quick update with Nexo.
I will be really quick. We actually have quite a few announcements to come, and I really hate to announce announcements, so I won't do it now. So stay tuned. We have more coming from Nexo. Recently, we were Elliptic, like I would say a leader in blockchain analytics, have supported Nexo in its compliance tools also. And if you remember last time, if we have the same people listening to us, we launched a charity campaign with Brave. As our partners, we actually exceeded our the charity campaign was Safe with Stories, Save the Children, concerned with children in need during COVID-19 pandemic. And we actually raised 27,000 worth of USD, which is great, thanks to the Nexo community also. So this is from us.
And now I guess we can go into the main part. But that's really great. Like I'm a big fan of charity campaigns, as you know, with BitHope. So that's quite an achievement. So pretty nice. And I hope, yeah, the money will be distributed in the right way. So yeah, I guess now we can go to the main topic, which is the Ethereum 2.0. And Anastasia, let's hear the quick take on what that is, and then we can go with like forward with the pros in the space.
Yeah, I'll really try to be quick. I'll try to just to give an overview of what we are expecting generally, and in more detail with more like spices and stories from the kitchen. We'll hear Ivo and Nikki later. So let me share my screen again. Okay, so an intro to Ethereum 2.0. What is, as it's called, also ETH2? It is the next upgrade to the Ethereum blockchain. It will be released in multiple phases, so-called phases, starting in 2020, like this year, with phase 0. Supposedly it should have been now in July. We'll see whether we'll start in July. Each phase is planned as to improve the functionality and performance of Ethereum in different ways. So what are like the two main differences between the current Ethereum 1.0 and Ethereum 2.0? ETH 2.0 is the just to be short, the two are proof of stake and shard chains. Very, very briefly, currently Ethereum runs on as most of you know, proof of work consensus mechanism. It relies on physical computing power, like the so-called miners, and electricity, the work, to build blocks on the blockchain. Instead of relying on physical miners and electricity, proof of stake relies on validators, which are like virtual miners and deposits of ETH. So with the shift from proof of work to proof of stake consensus algorithms, Ethereum 2.0 should result in improved scalability, security, and usability for the network. What are shard chains? That's actually very interesting. Shard chains are a scalability mechanism which drastically improves the throughput of Ethereum blockchain. Currently, having a single chain made up of consecutive blocks, as we know it, is incredibly secure and makes information easy to verify. However, it requires, it is requiring each full node to process and validate each transaction in consecutive blocks. And that can affect the ability to process transactions quickly, especially in times of high mainnet activity. We've seen that already like a few times, the Ethereum network being clogged. So with this mechanism, the shard chains, the blockchain is split, dividing the data processing responsibility among many nodes. So this allows for transactions to be processed in parallel rather than consecutive mode as it is now. So the roadmap, just very shortly, we start with phase 0. It introduces the beacon chain. The beacon chain stores and manages the registry of validators and will implement the proof of stake concession mechanism for Ethereum 2.0. The original Ethereum proof of work chain will continue to run alongside the new Ethereum proof of stake chain, ensuring there is no break in data continuity for now. This early iteration of the beacon chain is designed to be like as simple as possible, to be deployed like as early as possible, which we saw like we're still waiting for it. Which is why like phase 0 will not support smart contracts, accounts, asset transfers, and so on, and shards also. It is important to note here that ETH on the beacon chain will not be transferable on chain, but I'm sure about that we'll hear more from our guest speakers, because as I guess many of you want to know what will happen if they stake ETH now. Phase 1, this is the second phase of Ethereum 2.0. It will likely roll out in 2021, hopefully. The primary improvement here is the integration of shard chains. As I mentioned, shard chains are a scalability mechanism in which the Ethereum blockchain is split into 64 different chains, which allows for parallel transactions, storing and processing of information. At its most conservative estimate, it will enable 62 times more throughput than Ethereum, the current Ethereum 1, but it is designed to be able to handle several hundreds times more than that of Ethereum 1.0. Phase 2, this is the third phase of Ethereum 2.0. It will be likely, actually nobody knows when it will launch, 2021 or 2022 or later. This phase is currently, it's less clearly defined, but it will involve adding ETH accounts and enabling transfers and withdrawals, implementing cross-shard transfers and contract calls, building execution environments so that scalable applications can be built on top of Ethereum 2.0, and bringing the Ethereum 1.0 chain into Ethereum 2.0 so that proof of work can finally be turned off. So I'll leave it here to our guests to continue. There is much more to that. There are like the epochs also. It's pretty interesting to me, but I will leave it to our guests now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Anastasia, for this quick intro to ETH 2.0, and I would like to jump into the discussion now with Ivo and with Nikki. And I guess what I would like to start with is something more general. So I would like to ask, for example, we can start with Ivo, just like a general opinion of his opinion of how Ethereum is doing currently, and do you think its place of dominance in the space of the smart contract platforms is in any way in danger? And like, do you think there are any real competitors out there of Ethereum? And yeah, you can go ahead first. And of course, if you want, you can start with a short intro of who you are, what you're doing, and so forth. And the same goes to Nikki. So,
Okay,
guys.
so I'm Ivo, and I'm the founder of ADEX, which is a company that revolutionizes ad tech by making it more transparent. And the reason I'm familiar with Ethereum is because ADEX is built on Ethereum. To the best of my knowledge, it's currently the largest payment channel network on Ethereum. We are doing, for example, last month we did 100 million micropayments on payment channels on Ethereum, and this is all our in-house development. It's kind of similar to Raiden, but it works more. So what my opinion is that it's very hard to challenge Ethereum in terms of being the default platform to build on blockchain. So of course Bitcoin has script, but this is it's not that usable. Other platforms such as EOS, Tron, they also offer interesting things. But overall Ethereum is like your safest bet and the most developed ecosystem, and the thing that works the most and works the easiest. Basically it's like the smoothest development experience, and also it gives you credibility in business terms. It's a lot more credible to say that you are built on Ethereum rather than saying you're built on Tron. But the reason you asked me is probably because of my criticisms of Ethereum, which are plenty. And let me be clear, I don't think that Ethereum can be challenged in its spot of a go-to platform, simply because it has way too much momentum. Maybe in the future, but for now, no. And my criticisms are mostly currently around first of all, the community, and second of all, and this is related to the community, but it's the clients. In the past, there used to be Go, Ethereum, Get, and Parity. And this rivaling ecosystem of clients gave Ethereum very good decentralization, because no one can roll out changes to the network without like double verification and without the other client agreeing. And right now Parity lost its dominance because Parity decided to abandon the development of the client because of Polkadot. But also more importantly, the community hates Parity. It's not like the client is unusable. The client is still usable and maintained by Gnosis, I think. But everyone moved away from the Parity client. And the main developer of the Go Ethereum client, Peter, is getting he's pretty much a dictator, but by this point. And you can see some of his Twitter posts and reactions. He basically it doesn't seem like he cares about decentralization, but that's a very complicated topic. It will take time to explain it, but overall the community trusts him and he can do whatever he wants. If he rolls out an update, all of the exchanges, all of the miners would migrate within a day. And this culture it's not the same for Bitcoin. There is a lot more skepticism and a desire to verify things, especially because of SegWit, especially because of all the contention around SegWit and in 2017 all of these things. And people are careful. People know when changes are rolled out to the network, they know to verify, and they know to be skeptic of any changes. And this is not true for Ethereum. Ethereum just wants to push upgrades at any cost. And they think that this is a good thing. They think that this is technological progress, but it's not what blockchains are about, and it will probably backfire. And last thing to say is the community, this entire culture of let's upgrade now and let's trust these people. This is what's wrong. And the other thing is the community is becoming increasingly maximalist. They don't really care about alternative solutions. They just think Ethereum is above everything. For example, there's a very popular account on Twitter, Anti-Prosynthesis. And this account, there was like a question on Twitter, have you tried the Lightning Network? and he just tweeted no. No, he tweeted LOL no or something like that, and he got so many likes from Ethereum people. Just like, why? Like, what's wrong with trying something different? What's wrong with trying it? So this is the state that we're currently in, and a lot of these people are paid by consensus, and that's also a problem, and they're just brainless. So yeah, that's my current problem with Ethereum. But as I said, I don't think its dominance is being threatened.
Super interesting position. Thank you, Ivo. And Nikki, what do you think?
So hello guys, sadly I don't have a camera, so next time when we see each other live, I'm a blockchain developer in Nexo, and I won't go into too much details of Nexo because you probably have heard it. About the question, I mostly agree with Ivo. I have a different opinion just on the matter of how, especially how Ethereum 2.0 specs are changing, and I think there's quite a few people involved there, and they evolved a lot. So maybe the reason behind this client slacking is more about some people like paying more attention about Ethereum 2.0 than previously. But yeah, I know what he means by parity and get. The story there and the upgradable stuff. It's painful. Like the last fork, they basically forgot something and upgraded like 6 or 7 hours prior to the fork, and everyone needed to react for like 6 hours, which is painful. But hopefully this will change in future. Yeah. And for the other part of the question, is Ethereum stable? Yeah, I think it's quite stable right now. I think it's even like calm. There's not that much things going on. Like a few months ago, it was DeFi there, DeFi there. Like a lot of new stuff were happening all over the place. You had like a bit hard time to follow without the DeFi projects. Now I think it's a bit like more settled, and I don't know the word. Like it's very compact. It's not that spread, or it's not like tons of development. I don't know if that's for good or bad. Like the future will show. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Thanks. So then you mentioned that you have been using a scaling solution which was called payment channels. And that's a layer 2 solution, which obviously, as far as I understand, is working pretty well for you guys. So with this in mind, do you think there is really a need for a layer 1 scaling solution such as Ethereum 2.0? Because like I've been researching the topic, and the more I research the topic of Ethereum 0.20, like I get a bit more distressed that it's a very complicated, very complex venture that will take a lot of years to actually finalize. I'm not sure if there's like a point where it's finalized. And I'm pretty sure that it's very likely that something major will be broken by Ethereum 0.0 during one of its phases. So do you think there is really a need for Ethereum 2.0?
I completely agree with you that it's very complicated. And another issue is that the specs were changing for a long time before being finalized. There's also a lot of clients that are being built, which is not a bad thing. I myself advocate for multiple clients, but Ethereum 2.0 is taking it totally out of scale with like 5 clients or 6. You only need like 2 or 3. Anyway, so it's a really good question. I really believe in layer 2 solutions. You said it yourself, it's working really well for us, and I also believe that the blockchain is generally overused. I think most of the DeFi things, first of all, they're not really decentralized, and second of all, they don't benefit from being on chain. So I'm kind of a minimalist in that way, in that I believe that the blockchain is only good for payments and anything around payments. And that's, of course, a broad thing, quite a broad thing. It doesn't mean only Bitcoin, or it doesn't mean only transferring money, but it means programmable money. Anyway, so with that said, it's always better to have a solid layer 1. And the reason is there are many layer 2 solutions which depend on layer 1 being available. Like for example, in payment channels, if you want to settle the channel, and if you want to go to a dispute on chain, then the layer 1 needs to be able to accommodate that. In usual payment channels, if I have a channel open to you and you become unavailable, you become offline, then I cannot withdraw my money. And in order for me to withdraw my money on chain and close the channel, for me to be able to use the same funds to open a channel with someone else, then we have to go on chain. And this is why layer 1 scalability is extremely important. Even though I don't believe that everything should be on chain, and I don't believe that the chain should be able to handle like extreme transaction counts. I don't personally believe in the transaction counts per second metric at all. It especially doesn't make sense in Ethereum where stuff is measured in gas. But my point is, layer 1 needs to be available and needs to be solid. Maker is a very complicated system, you know that, and I won't go into it. But you saw what happened on Black Thursday when layer 1 was congested and the mechanism, the bidding mechanism couldn't play out right, and someone just bought all the collateral for next to zero. Even though this was a poorly designed system, it can still happen to a well-designed system such as payment channels. It can still inconvenience you if layer 1 is congested. So yeah, I'm a big believer in layer 2, but layer 1 is like a dependency to layer 2.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. And Nikki, what do you think?
Well, I think he said everything. Like in general, like layer 2 cannot exist without layer 1 at all. So at some point you need to focus there as well. So you need to be constantly going in a way, trying a few stuff. And honestly, I think Ethereum people are not afraid to try different stuff. Like the specs changed a lot. Like they even changed very recently, like 2 days ago or something like that. So they're trying, which I think it's a very good thing. Yeah, basically that's.
Okay, so as far as I know, though, a little bit more on this topic, I know that the miners, they can vote on increasing or decreasing the gas limits of blocks, and this is kind of a like a scalability solution, and I believe they have done this already a couple of times. And they can basically unilaterally take the decision to increase gas, so to allow more space into blocks. So is this a real like solution, or is it just like a temporary solution to a bigger problem?
It's completely temporary. And the reason for this is that the more you increase, that's a typical Bitcoin debate from 2017. The more you increase the gas limit or the block size, the harder it becomes to sync the chain yourself. And if you're not syncing the chain yourself, then you're trusting someone. And this is actually something that Ethereum 2.0 solves quite nicely, and Proof of Stake solves quite nicely. Is because of the light client support, you can sync the chain without having to go through each transaction, and it can still be equally secure. This is something that's a huge advantage of Proof of Stake that no one is talking about. And in Proof of Stake, you can increase the block size without having this concern because of the light client support. But in Proof of Work, you need to verify the entire chain. And this is an oversimplification. In Proof of Stake, there is still a point of verifying the chain. So yeah, overall, it's a temporary solution, doesn't work long term.
Okay, Nikki, you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, it's basically a temporary solution, and it's not like unlimited. They cannot just go tomorrow and double it. There are other like side effects of raising the gas, so they need to be careful with that. I think they tried to raise it the last time, like a few months ago, and it didn't happen. So I don't know, like there are considerations there. It's not just like mindlessly going and saying we are raising it. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Thank you. Okay, so I think we can go into the next part of the discussion, which is related to the possible inflation, actually, which is being caused by having two parallel chains with phase zero actually going live. So as Anastasia mentioned, and as far as I understand, once phase zero launches, there will be the current Ethereum, which is going to be called Ethereum 1, and there will be this kind of like a test net with staking, which is Ethereum 2. But in both of these parallel networks, like in the first, there will be proof of work, so there will be new Ether generated, and in Ether 2, Ethereum 2, there will be proof of stake, which will be also generating new Ether. So, does that mean that the supply of Ethereum will start increasing, um, like more than it was supposed to, or is there something else to this, and it will possibly not result in like oversupply of Ethereum of Ethers?
Well,
Um,
it actually decreases because the idea is that you're locking up Ether on the main chain pretty much indefinitely. Not indefinitely, but it's a one-time. As far as I know, it's a one-time procedure.
yeah, I
So
think it's burning. It's actually
yeah,
burning
yeah.
them.
When
Yeah.
you lock up Ether on the main chain, this means that this Ether disappears from the main chain and then appears on the beacon chain, but the beacon chain doesn't allow transfers until phase 1 or 2. Um, so my point is that it's actually good for supply. It actually decreases supply and puts more Ether into a locked up state.
Yeah. Nikki?
And like it's good to point here that there are two different assets basically. Like everyone is saying, they will be probably be the same price, but in general, they're while they're doing a parallel, like you have Ethereum 1 and Ethereum 2, just because you cannot transfer back, they're basically different assets. So I think exchanges and like other speculations will dictate maybe the prices differently. If even exchanges start to accept it early, they might wait a bit. And we talk about like phase 2 or 1. As in phase 0, there's no transaction, so you cannot do anything with your Ether for at least, like, I would say, a few years when they release phase 1. So in general, yeah, I think personally, I think there will be two different assets, and there will be some drama there. But yeah, like people from Ethereum say, they'll try to manage it as one asset and have one price. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's actually something to add. It's definitely two assets. But the second asset, Ether on the new chain, I don't think it can be traded. The only way it can be traded is with our IOUs. But then that doesn't make complete sense, because if you why would you buy an IOU when you can buy the liquid asset on the original chain? So yeah, I think they would be represented as two assets, but maybe only one of them will be traded.
Yeah, so this is very interesting about staking on the new chain, that people are going to be asked to basically burn 32 ethers on the main chain, so that they can have 32 ethers on this new 2.0 chain. And then with these 32 ethers, they can participate in staking and possibly multiply them by participating in staking. But you both are correct. I understand that it's not possible to do any transfers of Ether 2, while phase 0 is the only phase which is active. So they cannot be sent to exchanges, they cannot be traded, and then, as you said, Ivo, it's only on the basis of IOUs. I'm pretty sure, though, it's going to be, it might be possible, and I think this is going to happen. There could be a token on the Ethereum 1 that represents Ethereum 2 tokens, and this could be, I think, cryptographically verified, like that these tokens really represent Ether 2s. So it will be definitely interesting to see this, how this will develop. But my original point was relating to the fact that at the same time there are two places, two networks where Ether is being generated. So on the first one is like the standard Ether proof of work going on, and then on the second one there is staking. So new Ethers are being generated there as well. They cannot be moved, of course, until something, I guess, phase one happens. I'm not sure if even phase one unlocks them. Might be phase two. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But there will be still more Ethers being generated. So I'm curious, because I haven't really looked about for this, if the combined Ether production from both chains is more than it was supposed to be. So do you
Okay,
know?
I finally understood what you mean. I didn't understand last time. So the way it works is that this is why we have the Ice Age. And earlier on, when Nikki said that they forgot to add something to the client, this is what they forgot to add. They forgot to delay the Ice Age. And the Ice Age is a mechanism which decreases minor rewards. So it decreases the printing of new Ether. And the idea is that the Ice Age should happen when Ethereum 2.0 is live. But in my opinion, this is it's headed for disaster. And the reason is that there is such a big gap between the moment the Beacon chain launches and the moment transfers are available, and Ethereum 2.0 is usable. And the Ice Age effectively kills the old chain, which is something you don't want. The old chain is working, it's functional, you can use it now, so why would you kill it? Because if you do the Ice Age, then the block times are also increasing, and there would be no new blocks. So it's definitely headed for disaster, and it's not planned all that well, because you either have double inflation or you kill the old chain. It's one of the two. And because of that long interval, it's not possible to just simply migrate.
Nikki, do you have any?
Yeah, that's what I meant by drama. Like, I think there will be a lot of drama, not only because of that, but like a lot of people will went the old clients. Like, if you think in the future, even if like there is phase 5 or whatever, how do you force our people from Ethereum 1 to move to Ethereum 2? You know, you cannot just kill the chain because anybody can fork it. So I expect like forks, maybe Ethereum Classic 2.0 or however you call it. So yeah, I definitely expect to have drama in the future with this stuff, and I don't know how they prepare to handle these things. You know.
Okay, so one thing, Ivo, you want to say something?
Yeah. I just want to say yeah, exactly. You cannot kill the chain because it can be forked, but they can pretty much destroy what Ethereum is. Like, they could do a second, Ethereum Classic 2, because they have pretty much full dictatorship right now over the client. So the Ice Age goes when Peter decides it goes. Not exactly Peter, but Peter and a few other people. So when they decide that the Ice Age stays, the Ice Age will stay, and it will come into effect. And yeah, exactly. It would be pretty spicy, I think.
Yeah, definitely something to look forward to in terms of drama. But one other thing that maybe I would like to mention here, which is very important, and it's related to staking on during phase 0. Actually, the more people transfer their batches of 32 ethers to this, let's call it the test network, like phase 0 network, the less the inflation rate will be. So I have this a chart here that I cannot really show you, but basically, if only 16,000 ethers are being staked on the new network, on the test network, the annual inflation rate, so the annual new coins that are going to be produced are going to be like 143% from 16,000, which is quite a lot. So if there are only 16,000 ethers there, their owners will get more than 100% return on their staking. But if we go to, for example, 10 million ethers being staked, then the inflation rate, maximum annual inflation rate is 5.7%. So it's only 6%. So it's very interesting for me to see if once phase zero launches, if many users will decide to lock their significant, actually, holdings of ether, because the minimum in order to participate in staking is 32 ethers. I mean, according to current specifications. So I'm very curious if there will be a lot of people who are willing to burn their 32 ethers on the mainnet, on the functioning Ethereum, so that they can get phase zero testnet ethers and possibly participate in staking and earn additional ethers. And all of this on the background of not knowing when they will be able to use them. So this is very interesting. Well, what do you think will happen?
Keep in mind something else. I don't know what will happen, but keep in mind that exchanges play a big role here, because an exchange like Binance may allow, and probably will allow, they're probably thinking about this and planning this feature, will allow you to stake less than 32, and will allow you to stake flexibly. So to take your stake out in exchange for taking a cut from your profits. So I think that Binance and other consumer exchanges will enable a lot more deposits thanks to this like overlay.
Yeah, this is very interesting. And as I mentioned, yeah, Nikki.
I want to say that there's another point that like for the phase zero to start, there's like a minimum Ethereum that needs to be staked, like a minimum number of validators and so on. So you cannot really hit the only 16,000 Ether staked, because there's like I don't know the number right now, but there's some minimum for it to start. So essentially, how they going to launch it, like the deposit contract will start, then it will wait for deposits to be generated, then the network basically starts when they have it. So I think there was a research. I think Vitalik tweeted or somebody recently that they think that like around 1 million Ether will be at the start, or maybe I'm lying. Like you can check the tweet and it's there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I didn't know about this, that there is a minimum, but maybe I saw this somewhere. But it wasn't explicitly mentioned in like things that I was reading. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, I think we can move to like from this phase zero discussion, we can go to sharding, which is phase one. And my question here is, and I would like Nikki possibly to start. Do you think sharding is really the best scalability approach for Ethereum? And like, why do you think so? Or yeah, quite the opposite.
Well, it is definitely a thing. Like it's good as it reduces some of the problems that we have, as Ivo mentioned, that data availability, some other stuff like right now, if you increase the number of nodes, it actually slows the network, as they all need to get in consensus right now. If you like spread them on different shards, it reduces that. And like the main thing happens on the beacon chain, and that's why it's released first. Basically, beacon chain is the consensus, and there is everything that mostly happens. It's not out there, like when the execution environments are there on the shards, stuff will happen there as well. If this is the right solution, I cannot really say. I think it's definitely a good thing, and I don't think like they don't have the entire specs finalized and so on and so on. So it's I would say it's very early to know how exactly the shard system will work entirely. And if you go back and check the beacon change, changed quite a lot from the first iteration. So So I definitely expect a lot of changes there. And besides that, I have said many times that I'm a fan of zero knowledge proofs. So I'm looking for some scaling solutions on the chain with rollups and stuff like that as well. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
thanks. Yeah.
I have a kind of a controversial opinion here. I think the current chain has crazy potential for scaling. And the new solutions, I'll say a few things about sharding as well. But first of all, I think stateless clients are great because a stateless client means that the storage is decoupled from the client, which gives you the ability to grow the chain and increase the block size without worrying so much about storage. It's complicated to pull off, but it's possible. That's one thing. The second thing is precompiled contracts. So build functions into the smart contracts for stuff that's usually expensive, like cryptography, and as Nikolay said, ZK rollups, ZK snarks, whatever, all of those things. If you have primitives for them, then it's really much better, much more scalable. And then the last thing, the EVM can run much faster with just-in-time compilation. And this is something that browsers do for JavaScript. And our internet is fast. When you open a page, it's fast because of just-in-time compilation, and blockchains don't do it yet. So this is something that can work. And in general, making storage more expensive and introducing storage rent will allow the chain to grow better and dApp developers to optimize their contracts to avoid storage. And this is something that will work very well in terms of scalability, because storage is one of the big bottlenecks. And regarding sharding, yes, it's a solution, but the problem is that you don't have finality. When you do something on a shard, it's not final on the beacon chain until it becomes final. And this takes some time. And what this means is you cannot have a dApp or a smart contract interacting with a smart contract from another shard as easily as you have it on the current chain. It becomes much more difficult, and it becomes a multi-step asynchronous process for something to be finalized. And not only is it more complicated, but it does increase development costs for applications, because they have to think of all of those edge cases. And finally, maybe you're planning to get into this topic later, but Polkadot and Cosmos both do the same. Both are a solution for a network of multiple chains. Cosmos is focusing on the communication protocol, and Polkadot is focusing on a protocol which is like a tree shape, where you have a chain on the top, multiple chains on the bottom, and then even more of a pyramid shape. So both of them are, I personally think, somewhat ahead of Ethereum 2.0, because they already have working implementations of everything. Polkadot just launched yesterday, and the launch is really crappy. It's just a proof of authority network without transfers. But at least the stuff is built, and they can enable it much more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Actually, I was going to mention Cosmos because because we had them last time, and it was a very interesting presentation. And they basically presented to me something that really sounds like sharding, like functioning sharding and communication between the different shards. And also, I'm quite worried about this complexity when it comes to communication between the different shards on Ethereum 2.0, as you mentioned, because it's not easy to transfer tokens between shards. It's not easy for smart contracts to communicate. And what I see happening is actually having a shard, for example, for DeFi apps, a shard for some other type of apps. But yeah, if those apps really want to communicate with each other, it will be quite complex. And as you said, I think Cosmos and I guess Polkadot, I haven't really looked into them, but Cosmos are quite quite ahead in this in this, I don't know, area. And I think definitely there is something for Ethereum to consider when it comes to yeah, sharding and communication between shards. And Nikki, what do you think on
Yeah, like definitely like if you go and watch few metrics, like some of them will become slower. Like Ivo mentioned earlier, like transaction throughput or transaction per second isn't everything, because yeah, maybe you'll get more transactions, but as he mentioned as well, is it gets slower confirmation time, because here the finality is around 10 minutes, and usually today you went to wait around 10 blocks, or how many you wait, it usually it's like mostly 5 minutes, so it like doubles the confirmation period. And as you mentioned, like the developer time will be like a lot more. It will be harder to do this stuff. Like nothing is like backup compatible. Like you cannot just put the def you know it today inside Ethereum 2.0 and it will start working. That won't happen. There will be need to change a lot of stuff, like the cross chain communication. Like there's tons of stuff to happen there. And about Polkadot and Cosmos, sadly, I don't have that much time to follow them, so I'm quite behind on development there and cannot comment. Sorry.
yeah, all right, thank you. And then actually one comment that I heard about sharding is that it could even be argued that the challenges of implementing sharding are so great as to actually bring the whole model of implementing sharding into question. So do you think so? Like, do you think it's going to be very hard to implement this? And any estimation of
So the interesting thing is that sharding by itself is not that hard. I mean, it's very hard in comparison to other things, but what I mean to say is that the much more difficult part is figuring out how to use all of this, figuring out what's a good model for, exactly as Nikki said. Uh, how do you communicate, like dApp developers, what do they do? First of all, they have to reimagine the entire architecture. Second of all, the community has to figure out, and everyone has to figure out what's the best model. Do we split by app? Do we split by category? Do we split by whatever? And the current chain has a huge advantage of being interoperable. Like an application can go into Maker, Maker calls into some other token like USDC, which is using as collateral, and this whole stack works. But if you split all of this, it's an extremely huge effort and challenge to figure out what goes where and what's a good model, what's a good architecture, and it's possible that nothing is. That's why I'm such a big fan of Cosmos and of Polkadot, because they don't say necessarily split the chain into multiple chains. They say we give you the ability to make your own chain. Especially Cosmos, especially that's the ethos of Cosmos. You are given the ability to make your own chain, and then they give you something to connect the chain with. So why I think is good, because some applications may be better if they have their own chain, which is a part of this Cosmos or Polkadot network. But then you might have some other chains which are like Ethereum for pretty much everything, for smart contracts. And of course, you can apply the same to Ethereum 2.0, but it's not true that you can simply split the chain and get the benefits of parallel computation or something like this. This is not the case.
yes, actually, yes, it's good that you mentioned this. It's not really like you have one chain, you split into smaller chains, and these smaller chains are much more scalable, so that the whole volume of transactions or computations performed is larger. Um, but and my question is like these shards, which initially should be 64 shards. Are these copies of the beacon chain, like identical copies? Can they have some different characteristics? As you mentioned, like a customized, for example, one of the shards is customized for a specific use case, or it should be like really the same in terms of.
So
Yeah.
what I know theoretically is that there is this there's execution environments, and execution environment means that one shard can be completely different. But I don't know about the initial shards. Maybe Nikki knows.
Actually, the beacon chain itself, it's not like a blockchain, like it's not a shard. So basically, the shards won't start with the beacon chain. You can see the beacon chain being where the your accounts are there, the information about the accounts, how much you have, and so on and so on. And the shard is more like pulling from beacon chain what is really like the final information, or at least how I understand it. That's done through cross links and stuff like that. And the execution environment, yeah, it can run any environment. That's at least the plan. It's for phase 3, I think, so it's very far ahead. But the idea is that it will be able to run like EVM, EOASM, and like different type of smart contracts without any issue. And yeah.
All right. So yeah, sharding is, I think it's going to be quite complex to implement this. And I think what's going to be very complex is to really create this certainty and this idea of security for this new network in the minds of the users, because Ether has been functioning for 5 years now, and it has proven to be, well, with occasional hiccups along the way, to be quite stable and reliable. I think there will be definitely a process, same process that we need to go through for Ethereum 2.0. So basically, phase 0, which is the beacon chain, is testing staking. Phase 1, which I don't know if there is a name, I think it's called sharding, is testing sharding on top of staking. And then the next phase is going to bring really smart contracts on like the new type of smart contracts. And I would like to briefly maybe mention these things. Nikki mentioned EWASM, the new EVM, or is it the EVM or the smart contract name? I'm not pretty sure. So what are the advantages of this new smart contract language? Are there any advantages?
So
Nikki, yeah. Okay, Ivo, you can start then.
yeah, okay. Just a quick word before handing it to Nikki. It's an alternative to the EVM, and I covered this, if you remember, in one of the very previous meetups when we were talking about Polkadot. I said that smart contract development in WebAssembly is really cool because you can use multiple languages and you can use established languages, unlike Solidity, which is sort of made up.
Yeah, so I'll start with the question where you mentioned the security of sharding. So I think that's one of the problems. Like we already spoke about how sharding is hard, or is it super hard to develop, and so on and so on. Yeah, it's definitely hard, but it's not something quite impossibly hard. I think what is harder and very hard to do is actually validating how did this stuff that they are actually going to work securely. That like it's very hard to find people that are capable to validate that this stuff are done correctly. It's a lot easier to develop the specs than actually validate afterwards, at least my opinion. And on the other question about EWASM, it's basically Ethereum WebAssembly. It's like WebAssembly is getting popular nowadays. It's quite faster and very nice thing, and basically it gives the ability to build on top of it. So E for EWASM is basically Ethereum WebAssembly. So it basically gets Ethereum flavor into the WebAssembly. It gives stuff that we are used to use in Solidity, like block number, like some other stuff that are there in Solidity. It puts them on the WebAssembly, so you can do stuff. It's definitely a cool thing to happen in the blockchain space at all. I'm not familiar if there are some other networks that are trying to introduce WebAssembly in some way. Maybe there's some. I'm not sure.
Polkadot. So
okay.
If you're finished, then I should add that there are a bunch of networks there's Near protocol, I think, which is popular within Ethereum circles. Polkadot, of course, everything is based on WebAssembly, and there is some effort to get it into Cosmos as well, and there is a bunch of others. And the theoretical benefit is indeed that you can use multiple languages, and WebAssembly is something that's big outside blockchain. It's not a blockchain specific concept, and in my opinion, this is what makes it good. It's something that is used in the browser when you load, for example, an online game or something like this. Then it uses WebAssembly, and WebAssembly is kind of like a universal compiler target, a universal virtual machine. And it's really easy to translate to your real processor, to your real CPU, no matter if it's a desktop CPU or a mobile CPU. So this is what makes it fast, and this is what makes it so good for this, because it's a lot faster than the EVM, and of course you can write in multiple languages. So yeah.
And I think it's like easier to formally verify, so it will be like definitely more secure.
For this, I'm not sure. There's more tools to formally verify it, but it has a slight problem with determinism. And what determinism is, for anyone unfamiliar, is if you have a program given the same set of input, would it always generate the same result? And with WebAssembly, this is not a guarantee because of floating point mathematics. So like if you sum 1 point something plus 2 point something, then it might generate a different result on different CPUs. And this is why floating point math is disabled in most of the WebAssembly chains. Because if you do that, then you get this different result on different machines, which means that different validators might fork the chain because of this.
That's very interesting. So, yeah, Nikki? It was just a confirmation. Yeah, so it sounds like it's quite flexible. And like perhaps this is the biggest advantage, that it's very flexible and it's more efficient, obviously. But I guess EWASM will become available like quite in the distant future with phase 2 launching, and this could happen in 2022, I guess. All right, I think we covered a lot of ground, and we are kind of 16 minutes, actually 6 minutes, because we were 10 minutes late. So maybe we can finalize the meetup with a few words. Do you guys what do you think? When do you think phase 0 will launch? Do you think it will launch this year? Will it have a? Do you think it will be bullish as a signal, because we have a lot of traders here? Do you think launching phase 0 is something similar to the Bitcoin halving, let's say, where it's a big news, everybody's expecting it, but once it happens, the old rule of buying the rumor, selling the price will take place? What do you think? Nikki, maybe you can start.
Okay, so when it's going to be released, like honestly, I don't see the like maybe 3, 4, 5 months from now. Like recently, they had a testnet which forked in like few 100,000 books or something. Like it was working and it forked for some reasons. That's why the specs changed. Recently, they fixed out these bugs and upgraded some stuff. Actually, the problem was only in the one of the coins. It was in the Prism quant. So maybe if this is stable, now they are set at the testnet, and if it's stable, we might see it sooner. I think I mentioned it a few days ago in comments in the group that basically they can release it, fail, and release again just because you're not losing your money there. At the start, they're pretty much locked in the main chain, so there's a way for them to unlock it and give it back to you if they decide. Of course, if this happens, it reduces the trust, it reduces everything, so this shouldn't happen at all. but I wouldn't say that it's not the thing that is the super risky. It doesn't risk the entire Ethereum network or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I just want to say that in terms of when it will launch, I would not say when because it's so unclear. Like the last news that it was going to be in June turned out to be fake news, basically. Um, and the other thing is that Cosmos went 2 years in a testnet, or like 1 year in going through testnet, game of stakes, which is like a better testnet for them, and Polkadot is like 1 year on Kusama. So the testnet phase is taking a lot of time, and for Ethereum it will also. So yeah, it's a trade-off between launching and then having to fix the bugs in production, basically, and increasing trust, as Nikki said, or taking the time to properly test things. And also, of course, there's the unknown of how many Ether are needed to launch the chain, but I think that's not going to be a problem. People will find the Ether. So let's talk price. I think that it has, even though on the tech I'm not so bullish, I'm kind of bullish on the price. And what I mean is that it's certainly a good thing for Ethereum because you're locking up a bunch of Ether, and it's not only going to be a bunch, it's going to be a significant amount of the supply. And if the community is as religious as they claim to be, then they will stake a lot of it. And once it's staked, there's no moving. There's no moving from the main chain. I really doubt that they will fork to unlock that Ether on the main chain. If that happens, then all of the trust will be lost. And you will have a huge amount of Ether locked up. And maybe this will not impact the price immediately. It won't happen like Ethereum launched, let's pump 10 times. Maybe it will pump 2 times, or I don't know. But the long-term effect should be nice in theory. Of course, this can change.
Yes, interesting. So you're both kind of bullish on Ethereum, like cautiously bullish on Ethereum, and I am too. All right, and okay, so I think yeah, we can wrap it up. If you want to say something as like final words about like Ethereum, you can do it now. Otherwise, I'm just gonna close the meeting by thanking you both for, and actually Anastasia as well, for taking the time to participate in our little meetup here. And I just have one little announcement. In the next, I don't know, let's say 2 weeks, we will be holding a little, maybe the first survey for in Sofia Crypto Meetup, with which we would like to really learn more about the community and to figure out what we can do more to bring you the more relevant news, more interesting news, more timely news, and possibly in what language you would like the news to be. And because I see a comment like that in the chat that yeah, like people are asking why is this in English. It has always been actually in English, but this is something that we would like to ask the community definitely. Should we change the format? Not the format that much, but really the language of the content in the group, of the content of the meetups, of the events themselves. I mean, yeah, language. So yeah, with all of this, expect the survey. It will be actually we will be stimulating you in a specific way. We haven't really figured out in what specific way to do it, but definitely there'll be some kind of a stimulus to go through the survey and to fill it in. And yeah, I'm personally super interested to see the results because we haven't really asked the community what they think in terms of yeah, as I said, content in a language and so forth and so on. So I would really like to make this a success, and I would really like to include all of the different questions that I have for the community inside of that. So it might take a little longer to prepare together with Anastasia, but it's definitely coming. So expect it soon. And thanks to anyone or everyone that joined us today. The recording will become available as soon as we finish this up. And yeah, see you next month with a topic that we haven't really decided on yet, but it will be announced. And Ani, you want to say something?
Yeah, I want also to thank our guests. It was super interesting. I really enjoyed the talk, though I was like silent in the second half, but I think I talked enough in the first. So, and I'm really glad. I really hoped there would be references with Polkadot and Cosmos, as our listeners know, viewers also. We had Billy Ranekap from Cosmos in the last edition of Sofia Crypto Meetup. You can watch it in the YouTube channel. Also very interesting. And yeah, thank you very much again. There are a lot of questions around Ethereum 2.0. Let's see what happens.
Yes, I think we managed to answer at least part of them. And again, thank you, Nikki and Ivo. Thank you, Anastasia, and thanks to anyone who has joined us. See you next time.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.
Let's see.